Welcome to this recording of a group call in the field of Guidance for Life on Earth, following an in-person gathering with me, Stephen Busby, in 2024. We meet to inquire together through love into our next steps in higher consciousness, in outer everyday ways as well as deep within ourselves, as part of a practice of inner world work described in the Guidance for Life books. Find out more at guidanceforlife.info. I hope you enjoy the recording.
Yes, this is an offering of our whole group of the collective, I guess. And the last day when we were speaking about this, it was really clear how rich the time that we were together was. There was so much available, and there were I heard from at least four people, one of which was me, that why would we ever want to be doing anything else other than be on these retreats? It's just it's so rich and there's so much there. And we really, as a group, we really felt that we wanted to share with anybody that wanted to participate in this way in that collective. So that's where the energy came from for this offering. Yeah, and in terms of the structure for the call, it feels very open. If anybody wants to ask a question or to share something that happened during the retreat for them, regardless if you were physically at the retreat or not, because I feel like there were some experiences for people that were not at the retreat, feel like just jump in. And with that, I will invite Stephen to offer some words into our space.
Well, thank you, Mary. You'll notice, or you might know, that many people here on the screen in front of you were part of an in-person 2-week experiment recently here at Findhorn, subtitled, I think, Exploring Inner Realities. My intention, and I guess my experience, was that this was far more experimental than I've experienced in previous gatherings, in living together in frequency, as the books call it, in ways that invite a higher vibrational or a deeper vibrational life together. And I had some ideas beforehand of what that might entail and invite of us. And some of those were confirmed quite pleasingly, and others came in, I think, in ways that it would be true to say for all of us in the immersion were sometimes challenging. It felt like this was a big ask of us in terms of individuals coming to an in-person gathering who, in a way, through the consciousness that was flowing into our space, into our group container, were being invited to very new experiences, spaces, and even ideas of ourselves. And my growing sense really was that what was being invited and sometimes shown to us was quite a new version of humanity. That's why I entitled the post I put on our group page afterwards, A New Humanity, or as the Guidance for Life on Earth books refer to it, A New Human Blueprint. And I really think and feel that we all, in our different ways, had a very direct taste of that. And my experience and my impression was that often we were able to relate to ourselves and to each other and to support each other in incredibly new, innovative, and beautiful ways. And that, as I said before, sometimes we were invited into parts of the personality structure which, speaking for myself, felt very new and vulnerable, often nakedly so. I wrote down a little quote here from one of you on the screen that really touched me, which is that we were inviting a light to be shone into remote corners of the self, and being very much a part of the group as well as sometimes facilitating the processes, I really had a very moving impression and experience of that in ways that I think were daring and courageous. And so I really want to appreciate and honor all of you who are with me in that experiment. And then as we drew to a close of the 2 weeks, the idea came that because we'd realized that we weren't an isolated group, but were part of a far wider field, of which some of you here are an integral part, it would be fitting and gracious for us to see what might be shared from our space more directly out into the wider field. And the best way to do that is for anyone who was there for those 2 weeks to listen and feel within for the impulse to express something, to bear witness to your impression of who you were becoming for those 2 weeks, as well as who you might be becoming now. Because there's a real sense of this energetic container continuing to expand in new ways, I think, in daily life for all of us. So, my guess is that we'll be hearing things from people that very much bear witness to continuing movements of consciousness. And I'd like to ask those of you who weren't there to bear with us in this, because this is really not an easy place to speak from. These, in a way, are unformed human places. They're not of regular consensual human culture. So we don't have, ready-made, tidy and acceptable ways of speaking about this, because we're speaking from a very different place, often in consciousness, and which I feel is being birthed right now through us. And I also wanted to pick up on what you mentioned, Mary, in your introduction, that if any of you here have questions that arise from what you're hearing, then do bring in the questions too. There might not be responses that come, but we learned during our 2 weeks that actually the fast track to these frequencies of consciousness was to adopt a profoundly inquiring attitude to life, to what was coming through us. So we practice learning from a place of deep inquiry, often within ourselves and between us too.
Yeah, feeling some different currents of energy kind of opening up. There's something that feels it's been kind of awoken all through the immersion. I mentioned this before in the immersion. It kind of felt like simmering or cooking, and really started to notice a certain intensity of energy, especially in my body, my hands frequently kind of lighting up and feeling full and tingling, and things happening at the crown, and a lot of this also seemed to be related to turning my attention and inviting guidance from the unseen realms. That it still seems to be more at hand, more readily available and willing. And now I'm even remembering back to invoking Ramana Maharshi and Papaji at one moment, and just, I remember saying, if you're willing, and it was like, it's right there, and I can feel it a bit on the periphery right now. It's like immediately being moved to tears that it's yeah, it's so available, joyfully available here. It's continued to be so in my meditations recently. Been very spacious, and there's remnants here too of fear and doubt, and they seem to be more housed or kind of surrounded by something larger, something more alive, more full. Yeah, there's so much things emerging in dreams, connecting with some forms of intelligence. It seems there's communication happening in dreams. There's flavors that feel like from my youth or my childhood, or like other versions of that could have been my childhood, that feel really like alive and like pristine, I guess is a word that comes. Yeah, maybe that's good for now. Thank you.
I had a very powerful experience during the retreat. And I can feel, Matt, what you were just saying about your hands, the tingling and the kind of aliveness in your hands. I like that's with me all the time now, which is kind of interesting. Um, one of the, I guess, a focus of the retreat was inner sensing, and we, as practices, sensed into things like trees. I had an experience with a seal. Um, and then we went kind of further and sensing into the blueprint or the patterning behind the thing, the tree, the seal, whatever. And so that was kind of a progression of experiences. And towards the end, I had a very powerful experience of being kind of in that patterning, in that blueprint, and it feels like being in back of, like backstage. Um, I had the experience of being in that blueprint of love, actually. Yeah, being in that place that is the in back of and generative of all forms of love. And it was hugely powerful. And then since the retreat, I had a post-retreat week with two wonderfully sensitive and supportive people, and I had further experiences with being behind in that patterning. One was being behind the patterning of form and matter, and one was being behind the patterning of relationality. And when I got home a couple of days ago, I had the experience of being behind the patterning of the creation of the land that I'm living on. And it was, again, very, very powerful. And it feels like this is now becoming my primary experience of being, I don't know, being alive, maybe. Whereas before, I was kind of in this material layer thinking like this is reality and the other stuff is, I don't know, maybe real. And now it feels like I've really shifted into the primary experience of being behind and having an awareness of that all the time. And then having this layer being one current layer, among many of which I'm not aware. And so it's kind of I feel like it's a real fundamental shift, like not an upgrade, but a whole new operating system. Yeah, very, very different. So yeah, it does feel like something brand new. Like Stephen was saying, brand new humanity, a new order of something. I'm not sure, but it feels super different for me. Yeah, thanks.
I'm very excited to be here now with all of you and to see all your faces on my screen. Make some tingles in my heart. I notice a sudden tension, trying to funnel down and constrict my sense of experience into words right now to try to convey you something. And I'm just speaking it out like this. I can just let go of it now. And at the end, I believe that whatever I'd say is not so important, but there is something that is coming alive anyway by just me moving through the sensation and the imprints of this experience. Yeah, and I was almost about to say back then, I think there's more and more of me that starts to really realize, and not just as a concept, but as a lived sense of existence, that there's not so much a back then and then what's going to come after, but really a sense that, yeah, I can still feel me and us sitting there. And now it feels like this movement of expanding the walls much beyond the house where we were to really invite all of you more fully. And as I say this, there were also a few times this remembering and invitation that we're not just the 12 of us or 13 of us sitting here, but much more, actually, all the people that in previous retreats were sitting in this living room and the one that will come after. So it really felt really crowded. And yeah, it's good now to somehow refresh my senses by actually seeing some faces of probably some presence that I could feel sitting in this room. And maybe the most alive picture or imprint that I have right now, it resonates very much with what you were sharing, Mary. The sense of a background presence that all of a sudden my awareness is expanding into, and I have a sense myself of a deep down somehow. I think I started to really feel the architecture and the shape of the channels that my consciousness took of this inner sensing. And yeah, it comes also a picture of this somehow, this sense of a what seemed to be now a tiny room of my 5 senses that my mind is able to project and to give sense or matter to. It feels like actually very tiny, and it feels like there is a whole sense of existence that I started to peep in through the different exercises and through the different attunements to the inner sensing. That feels so vast and so huge. And this really, really have a sense of so much aliveness and so much curiosity and excitement to discover this universes through this portal of inner sensing. And this really, like, yes, I guess you can feel my excitement. I don't have much words to to encapsulate it right now. Yes, and yeah, and it really feels like I often talked about this sense of the secret cave behind my heart that I felt sometime, where it feels like a bit hollow, a bit like there's something here somewhere I can feel, but that I cannot access fully. And it feels like I got something here, but not from my understanding, a bit like your phone, Mary. I think I accept more and more that there is something I cannot understand, but there is a sense of a direct knowing that feels like an understanding, but without having to compute this with my mental abilities. Yeah, and there is a sense of a now I have this picture coming of, access this secret cave by, instead of holding onto a form or a matriarch of patterning of how I used to do, but just melting, and therefore the water naturally seeps through the rock and access every room eventually. Yeah, and I have the feeling that much of the new version of humanity that I'm dreaming of and sensing already alive in my heart is available through these cracks in the rocks. And I'm so longing to meet all of you and more of myself there. yes, so please come along and play with me. I'm very excited to. That's an invitation to all of you. And yes, I will leave it here for now.
I'll speak, but I have no idea what I'm going to say. Other than this frequency of love that's here, has me touched so deeply. And that during the immersion, the depth of access to the frequency of love as a collective was profoundly moving. And I feel it here, and I felt it as soon as I came on screen, seeing you all. And there wasn't first a look for my, live-in immersion cohorts, but you're all it. We're all this one incredible field, and I'm so touched by the love that manifested. So, with immersions like this, much of it's so much happens in the 2 weeks that it takes quite a while to feel how that impacts life. And so what I can echo that others have said is, I really am aware of the helpers and asking for help and not being alone. And I'm traveling solo right now through Ireland. And there are definitely moments and waves of loneliness that come in. But as soon as I tap in to our field and the unseen beings, it shifts. And that's the real knowing and access to that is new for me. And also embracing my experience, honoring my experience without comparing mind. Yeah, this is a strong invocation that I have, and it's what I feel is happening for me. Thank you.
I love seeing your faces, but I especially love hearing your voices. There's something about the auditory sense right now that I felt it also last Thursday. Christina and I were both on the group call, and just hearing Christina's voice was so powerful, and some imprint of the sound of voices, revisiting those is really soothing for me and exciting. Yeah, it's really good to be with you all right now. I notice what comes up for me is wanting to share a bit about daily life now, and the way that daily life has so many more options than before. So I've been spending some time with family members like my father and my father's girlfriend and my great uncle who's 96. And I notice just a different quality of being able to really attune with these people. And that's really precious for me, to have just this much more, just a tiny bit more skill or capacity or whatever it is to truly be with people who I love, and otherwise there can be some noise in the system. So that's been one piece where it just feels really qualitatively different for me to interact with those people, and it feels like a legacy of this time that we spent together, which I very much connect with what you were saying, Kale. It's like it's still happening, it's still reverberating, and I'm still in it in a beautiful way. Another way my daily life is different is when I go to sleep at night and I lie down, instead of just, I don't know, random thoughts coming through, it's like a playground. It's like I can attune, I can take this precious moment and attune to so many different things, to people that might come up in my mind, or myself and other parts of life. The other day I walked past a apartment I used to live in Santa Fe, and I just stopped and took the moment to really attune to who that person was. And again, this refracting that can happen when attuning to different time moments in this life. There's something so rich. Yeah, it makes me excited to get to be me. It makes me excited to have this life and so much appreciation. So that's another daily kind of difference, is just this opening of this possibility of attuning, period. Just attuning to a person, to a tree, to the past, to, yeah, all of these possible. So I am feeling a great amount of hope right now. With just these new ways of being with myself, being with other people, being with places. And it's really inspiring for me. And yeah, I'm really grateful for all of you. Thank you.
So very good to be here. I thought I wouldn't be able to speak, but I do want to. I never had such a strong sense of the vastness of the seascapes, the skyscapes, the heartscapes that we reflected and lived together. I also, I've definitely felt the wider field in previous gatherings, but this was something new, the kind of presence of those who were not physically with us was so palpable and so nourishing. And so, I don't know what the word is when there's no barriers. It was very, very strong. I also felt for me something new was a willingness for me and for many of us to be with our vulnerability as human beings, and to let it be accepted and loved and welcomed, and it's just another level of embracing all that we are, loving all that is most difficult to love, and immensely grateful for that deepening in me. I think just another little big thing was this idea of reframing, which we often hear about as an invitation, which is always helpful, but to reframe really from a perspective of this quality of love that we're being called into. It's just, yeah, it's not an idea. It's a vital living frequency that we bask in and swim in and don't understand and are still nourished by it. Thank you.
I want to add something too. What has been with me a few times in dreams is Calais made some tempeh, And when he talked about the tempeh, this fungus basically unlocking things in the chickpeas that would create more for us to receive. And there's something is growing and unlocking things for us. That was actually in a couple dreams, and so it's just something about the texture of it, just little things like that, following into the dream space, and this further exploration of dream spaces, and where the, you know, where is it in the daytime, like this the switching into the subtle body, the sensing has opened up so many possibilities. And as I see you all here, you know, I think one of the biggest things was how much we learned from each other by talking about our processes. And I think sometimes, you know, working through things that came up for us personally, but it just this incredible kaleidoscope of experiences and our individuality coming together. And I think almost like the fungus, you know, opening up so much more and continuing to do so. Yeah, I think from my personal experience in these last few days, I came home to quite a situation at home, and it's very, you know, interesting for me to see how I can have much more space and no fear, I think, is the big thing. There's something about, I mean, Stephen talked about life curriculum, you know, how everything in some ways is a learning experience. And I realize too, sometimes when I revisit, especially this latest experience, and there were maybe things that I now can see I could have done differently, you know, also the option of replaying it differently and knowing that that also has an impact. Yeah, just a few things from me here. It's lovely to see you all.
Yeah, I'm feeling so alive. There's a rawness here, a rawness of life, which I sense. And these seconds and moments between the sharings are so powerful, I find. There's so much. They might transmit maybe even more of the immersion being, of the immersion energy, which is flowing and living, a living being. It's not easy to say something, right? It is. It's a fullness of life available, lived, and radiating. Today I met a friend here in the Findhorn in the park, and she experienced 2 or 3 of our participants during the week in a dance session here in the community. And she said they were outstanding. They had such a presence, such a radiance around them. They felt very special in the group of people dancing there. This was very touching for me to hear. And then she said it was after the first week only, and she said she wonders how we all felt and lived after 2 weeks and now. So Yeah, world work. Powerful work. Very powerful to be still here with all of us.
I feel also these moments of listening to you all and then this moment of silence so rich, and there I feel so much, such a richness is coming through, and I'm really, really touched by listening and this abundance of life that I feel in listening and seeing you, and this touchness. And also to be here with all of you in a bigger space feels for me so good, because in this immersion, like I felt already, this is not us there being in this space, doing something, having a retreat. I felt very much connected to all of us, our bigger space, people that were there before, that like really, I don't know, in different times or in the future, there and physical beings, but also non-physical presences that were so clearly, or fields that are so clearly touchable or experienceable. So, and for me, this constantly practice of inner sensing of everything, like beings around us, humans, nature, animals, is such a shift of how I am showing up in the world, or also letting the world come in, or the world, or wording, keine Ahnung. It's such a different way of receiving something bigger, receiving a much bigger potential that is far more than my little life or your little life or this moment even. It's such a, I feel there becomes such a field of relatedness is opening in this practice. What you are doing, what I am doing, what we are actually, this yeah, it's really not easy to put in words, and very, I agree with what Stephen brought in the beginning, that it's so vulnerable to even to try to give words to this. And yet there's something so simple and so deeply human, or deeply being us as nature in this, which is somehow tasteable. I don't know, but it's yeah, and it's for me not easy to relate to a time, like going back. It's really, I feel also it's a continuation of us, but also of other beings involved in this field, and it's not somebody's doing something there or there. It's really a bigger expansion of all of us, I feel. And yeah, there's a lot of intensity also, is still with it for me. Yeah, just being really, really touched by all of us. And also the ability to care for each other, to see each other in a totally effortless way, is something that is also really touching me. Like, I experienced a lot of
challenging moments, or I'm still, and there's something so easy in the care and support that is in the field, which is not so much about needing something or doing something. It's really more sharing and the receiving and the growing within this, which feels so tender and yeah, also natural somehow. And yeah, I see this as a much bigger movement than just being us there 2 weeks. It's a much bigger, vaster experience than one immersion that happens in 2 weeks.
It's interesting. I think I've never been feeling so much included without being there in physical form and being totally aware of you. I think the strongest connection, which doesn't surprise me too much, is I had with the landscape and the house itself, and then you too, as human beings. Yeah, but it's interesting to watch me in that, observe me in the relation to landscape, what the bond with earth and space makes. And also I'm incredibly grateful for all of you who posted, who were part of it, because it gave me new perspectives. I could see through your eyes, which are my eyes. And so thank you so much.
Well, I can say something about experiencing this call. During the retreat, I was not very active in kind of actively connecting, but I was, of course, aware of it happening. And having been there at that place before, so it's kind of easy to feel some kind of connection. So it's kind of, yeah, it's something when you talk about that you had the sense of the room being crowded with all the people who had been there. It's an interesting aspect, and that feels totally, yeah, that's probably right. And listening to what you are sharing right now is somehow I'm struggling with listening to you and not being caught up with the words, because if I listen to your words, I don't get anything. It's like, I understand what you're saying, but still, it doesn't make sense really if I try to take it that way. So, but if I listen in a different way, it's more like I'm aware of something on my side, something moving. So it's a sense of if I'm walking along a beach and the waves are coming, so, and that's a similar sense now that I can feel the waves without really looking, or maybe it's walking at night, so I can't see them, but I know them and feel them somehow. That's my kind of sense of getting what you're talking about. That those waves, I feel movements, and they are familiar. So that's also something that's happened during the call. Is, yeah, I know that, although I don't know it at all. But yeah, that's like I knew that, or the possibility of those experiences, even if I haven't had them in the same way. So yeah, I'm happy I'm here to become reminded in a different way.
Yes. I feel so connected and so resonant with so many things that have been said. My heart's quite pounding. I'm still with my experience last, when was it? September in Findhorn. And all of that is, if that's possible, seems right here for me right now. Thinking about joining on the West Coast again in September. It's interesting. I guess just recently I had a tiny bit of fear of what I had experienced when on Findhorn again, and afraid, oh, would that happen again? But now listening to you, oh, it's such a, I feel so welcomed and not afraid. I guess the only thing I want to say now is, and it happened this morning, and it seems to happen a lot to me, is I'm sort of in love. And it's not even a sort of, and it's a lot with place. And I'm overwhelmed with it. And my conscious mind goes like, there's like no reason for this feeling that I have of, it's like rapture or in love or and it brings tears, and it's got something to do with so many of the things that was said in this hour. Yeah. And I just want to listen more. I just want to listen more. And it is another state. You know, it's it's like being in another place, you know, or something. It's, you know, when you said, Wolf, about the waves and that they're speaking and that you feel a vibration. I guess there was one thing that was really new that said to me, I think maybe Jennifer, but that this vibration is a being or it's alive. It's not like it's here, like it's like a being. Yeah. And I don't think I knew that till this time now. Yeah. It makes it all more precious and unbelievable. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. I'm bowing down. Yeah, I'm learning to bow down.
Ah, this is so thrilling and exciting. Being evolutionary participants in this movement of our creation now. Expressing what no longer needs the words of the past to invite us all into this movement this evolutionary movement, evolving together. This is living, this invitation, this living invitation to experience creation, to actually experience our creation. If we want to give this the word love, this fabric of us, this manifestation of us, every thread of our being energized to be this now. Together. That's what is such an exquisite birth together. And having experienced us on this journey, this is just so incredible. This is, yeah. Being inside evolution. Yeah. Magic. So appreciative, so grateful, so honored. Thank you, as always, for us. Thank you for us.
Yeah, this call, it feels like such a continuation or even a being in what we were in and yet is always here. And for me, this sense of a deepening and an opening to love, it actually was precipitated when I went out west last fall and sort of was in person with many of you, and then this spring with Stefan and Timon and Judith in Germany, and Clara in Berlin, and Monique and Kieran in Ireland. There was something about being in physical presence that brought a deeper experience where below the personality, this expansion, opening to love of structures sort of being broken, and a way of living being shifted somehow, and a profound deepening once reaching Findhorn and being with everyone of the land and the vastness of that experience, and having been so touched and opened and expanded through love of being in people's homes and being in practice together, not just in a retreat, but in any way, I feel is so profound. And so truly, I felt such a presence of everyone here in Findhorn, so much so that the energies, you could feel it. It was almost like, for me, it was like this. And then beyond that, other beings, and sometimes even in practices, the sense of other beings being with us, speaking through, which also happened with Stefan, Judith, and Timon and I. There's something quite profound and beautiful, and all the stuff that would come up in daily living, ego, personality, and this weaving and opening, and just being with what is, being with what was arising, and allowing, and so there's something quite, profound about being together, which is expanding here on this for me here with all of you. And one thing fascinating is I went on to Edinburgh, and I could actually feel past this field into the history and the layers underneath. And so it was sort of walking in a bit of a magical world of just feeling thousands of years of man or us or humans and the land in relation to land, and even how the land before us was, and back even here now, there's a softness and a silence to everything, because there's something beyond that's so palpable that I feel just continues, whether we meet in, like with Alina's call or the Thursday group, there's something, in practices and smaller retreats, and just even being one-on-one in homes, or in being welcomed, or having someone it's just, there's something so deep and profound and touching and being touched around it all. Incredible gratitude. Like literally, I can say these worlds beyond worlds in this world that I've experienced through meeting up and staying with people, and in this retreat, is beyond imagination. So there's so much more. There's so much more. That's the beauty. There's so much more.
My physical body wasn't in the immersion, but the rest of me was. And I was really gifted with this unique position that allowed me to play with time, location, and states, because I would be following along and I would be experiencing something in me, in my life, and then I would get an audio tape of what had happened a day later. So there was a synchronization. And I think being in that particular role, one of the things that has really impacted me that I think is quite significant is this intensification. So the 2 weeks where everyone was together, there was an intensification in that container, that collective. There was certainly an intensification in me. And I think the gift of this intensification is a greater sensitivity to what's between and behind words. Even now, there's so much behind each of the sharings and in between the words. And what's really clear for me is this wasn't just an experience with a group of people in Findhorn, this intensification. We've been intensified. I notice there's a new sensitivity in the doctor's office talking to Stephanie, where there's such a depth behind the words being communicated. Worlds. So we are in a new place, and I'm deeply, deeply grateful.
Yeah, I was in this special situation to be there for 1 week physically and then leaving. And while the week before was really almost constant flow for me, this departure makes me a bit nervous even. Like this departure was, yeah, something I hadn't experienced before. Like I was somehow sent on my way by, yeah, probably the most beautiful words and words I had ever received by every one of the people present, like touching me in a very specific spot. And there was no sadness, there was no anxiety to leave this collective physically, even though it was so easy, so effortless the whole week. And I went to a sailing trip with all my friends and friends of friends. We were around 30 people. And somehow I didn't have to leave our collective. And I was constantly checking in and was generously just pouring out our vibrations. And I didn't even switch on my phone during the whole sailing trip. I sometimes was a bit I felt a bit afraid of not being in touch, but then I relaxed into it and could again just connect to like almost a net-like structure where I just sit back. I would do my meditations on the ship like 3 times a day. Would just connect with our collective space and just pour it to the people present on the ship. And yeah, it was, we had just as much flow there for 5 days with friends where it was never possible before. Yeah, so that was really huge, and it is still. I'm still with the recordings, and so I'm still in the retreat. I'm at Wednesday 2 weeks back right now, and I can only move very slowly because it's so dense. There's so much happening, and the synchronicities of this have been sometimes insane. Like yesterday, I had to go back to my home, and I was so afraid to go home suddenly from work. And I started listening to the session, and I think Calais was sharing about fearing to go home, and the group would explore into this, and this fear just dissolved in me, and I could go home. So yeah, time and space, really not the coordinates most important right now. Still there, still very real, but not so important. That's huge for me. Thank you all for being there with me.
I have an experience of being in this retreat or any kind of retreat since months. So it's been like a long retreat since many months now. And it seems like the work got intensified, for me at least. And I do feel the jump into the new way of being, the new way of being a human being, where there's more collaboration with invisible forces or invisible beings, and there's I feel in this new way of existing, I feel like I'm more in a phase of discovering what's possible, like I'm trying to understand, no, like orient myself in a way, so to, oh, if I say this, what happens, or if I do so. And I actually ask for, okay, show me, teach me. I don't know. What can I do with this? What can I do with that? it's like I feel like I'm in a, like always it comes to my mind, Stephen, your expression curriculum for life. I'm in a totally new, I don't know, it's I from nursery to kindergarten. I don't know exactly where I am, but I'm in a new grade, let's say. And yeah, there's a totally different thing to explore, different things to learn, different forces, different dynamics, and it feels so new and so interesting. And what's present for me is that I've been able to have this shift in myself, but also with some people that I work into a business environment that are not really connected to our field. And that's really, wow, I was like so impressed. And yeah, so I think it might be way bigger than I'm aware of. So I'm really, really connected to the retreat. It's like I've been there. Or maybe I was. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody here and beyond.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Blessings,
Thank
everyone.
See you,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Love.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
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 Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you.